Well, you guys hit the like goal from the last time we did this challenge, so here is part 2 of 4 Ultimate the Honorable Way. But I do have to mention, the last video I did on this challenge wasn't all that interesting to you guys. I think it's because the formula of going through an entire game with a challenge got predictable if not stale. So I'm doing something different and adding a little mystery in this video. You'll have to find out what the theme of the video is as I go through the challenge. Once you figure it out, leave it in the comments below. So with that, the challenge rules are in the description, and let's get underway. The gear that I'll be using is G-Rank Darren Moran armor and Seregios longsword. It's the closest thing I have to samurai equipment without breaking the rules, so it'll do. The first fight was with the Desert Celtis, which I still don't understand why you fight it in an area that's not a desert. Anyway, it's been a while since I did a challenge with these rules, and it took some getting used to. The damage I was taking was a little more than I was expecting, but I was able to dispatch the foe honorably in a short time. Next was the Ash Ketchawacho, which was a fun honor battle all things considered, but towards the end I got carried away and attacked it when it was taking a breather. Well, time to do that over again. After coming back from that disqualification, I was patient this time and was able to finish the fight honorably. Then I thought about my inventory for a bit. I was thinking that the charm items would be against the rules considering they give somewhat of an advantage, so from this point onward I won't use the charms in this challenge. We fight Berserk Tetsukabra next, and unlike the normal version from the past video, this one was actually a fair fight. Apart from the blast rocks and the 2 feints, I was careful not to get carried away and still beat it honorably. Tiger Stripe Zamtrios on the other hand was kind of a pain, but wasn't anything ridiculous. He did more damage than I was expecting, plus I couldn't get much openings. That and a Frenzied Raging invaded the quest and inflicted me with the Frenzy Virus. I did get away though and was able to finish the battle with the Tiger Strike. One of my favorite species, Tidal Najara, was proving to be a difficult adversary. He hit me a lot and the quest was taking longer than expected. I was running out of healing items and was on my last feint. But despite my disadvantage, I was able to fell the Mighty Serpent and barely win. This fight was the most challenging yet. However, that's not saying much as you'll soon see that some of the opponents ahead will make this fight look like child's play. Shrouded Nursilla had some odd tricks up its sleeve, most of which consisted of swinging webs from sky to sky for some reason. Not long after this honor battle came probably the most dishonorable and brutal of opponents, the Desert Celtis Queen. Why is she dishonorable? She can grab you with huge pincers and is aided by her peasant Desert Celtis, which we dispatched earlier in the run. Now you may be asking, why is this queen brutal? Well, I'll let you see for yourself. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot. In case some of you were wondering why Desert Celtis wasn't added in Stories 2 and his queen was, now you know. Other than the queen's brutality, this fight was difficult and her peasant was getting in the way, especially with the amount of paralysis he was inflicting on me. If this was a martial arts tournament, the queen would most definitely be disqualified. Up next was Oroshi Kirin, the majestic unicorn dragon thing. I didn't have the G-rank version, so the high rank version was the only one I had. This honor fight wasn't bad since elder dragons don't get exhausted. That, and even though it had ice armor making it resist damage, I could still go for the head, which was a weak point. But for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to attack it while it was down, which could easily have been avoided. Once again, am I not an honorable warrior? The next monster was one I was fairly sure wasn't possible with this challenge, Darren Moran. The reason I didn't think this was possible going in was because this quest pretty much requires the use of artillery. The only times when you get openings for melee damage are when his arms are close in the first phase, when you are on his back, and in the final phase. So I went in with low expectations. First, I just sat there and waited for him to get close enough to attack the arms. Then I got on the back, which by the way is not considered mounting because I'm walking on the back. If I'm standing on something and not gripping it or riding it, it's not mounting. Anyway, I was able to attack the back as well as the front of the head. Unfortunately, since I couldn't use the Dragonator, I had to let Moran drill the ship. I had to keep a mental note of the ship's integrity while also remembering the rules of the challenge. It was a lot to keep track of, and the ship's integrity in the final phase was really starting to concern me. All I could do was just hack away at his belly and hope I win, which I somehow did. I couldn't believe what I just did, and on my first try as well. This was the G-rank version, by the way. I guess that means it's possible to beat Darren Moran without using the artillery. But we're not done yet. We still have a few honor battles left. The next quest I do is the high-rank version of Dalamador, since the G-rank version is event exclusive and I didn't have access to events at the time of doing this part. Anyway, the ruling for this one was a bit confusing. Do I consider him moving around the map as out of battle stance or not? That was the main question. I decided to make it so I don't attack him while he's on the move. The reason is he's not in a position to fight while doing this, though you could argue he sends meteors to deal damage, thus making him still in a battle stance of sorts, but I still made the ruling regardless. Anyway, I wasn't sure this was going to be possible with how much health Dalmador has, and the time limit being 50 minutes. Unlike other monsters, when this one is down, it stays down for several seconds longer. This was a problem in the fight since every second counts for dealing damage, not to mention the amount of times it takes for him to finish moving around the map, but despite all of that, I was still able to beat it honorably. It took around 35 minutes. Alright, so this next monster I kinda underestimated a bit since I would always beat it several times before. Well, with a different weapon type. So this monster is Molten Tigrex, and it shouldn't be that bad in an honor battle, right? Right? This fight was so mind-bogglingly difficult that I just can't. Molten Tigrex hits so hard and leaves very little breathing room for me to do any attacks. I mean, yeah, when he's not in rage mode, he's slow and is open for attacks, but as soon as those veins start glowing and he starts roaring and charging, there's not much I can do. I think this largely has to do with the lack of counters Longsword has prior to World and Rise, leaving me with no real way to get a guaranteed evade outside of diving, and all this in addition to the challenge rules. I may not be the greatest at Longsword, but I've been stuck on this fight attempt after attempt with no real way to beat it. I've even tried to get a better sword, but of course you guys know how the desire sensor works at this point. So naturally, after giving up on that, I continued throwing myself at the dang thing over and over again and kept failing. I can't even count the amount of attempts it was taking. I had to take a break from this challenge for a while because of this very hunt alone. This was hardly an honor battle and more of a one-sided beatdown. It eventually came to a point where I had to surrender, turn down the difficulty, and fight the high rank version instead. I know some of you won't think this is honorable, but knowing when to accept defeat is honorable in a way, right? Anyway, we move on, and the second to last obstacle is none other than Gog Mazios. Another siege fight. Even though I beat Darren Moran without using the artillery, Gog Mazios is a whole nother animal. See, unlike Darren Moran, Gog Mazios targets the player at all times and moves much more and much faster despite its sheer size. Not to mention it has more health, and I had to do this without artillery as well. This fight was going to be far more difficult. My first attempt, of course, was not great. Gog Mazios' speed was definitely something I was underestimating, and as a result, I got trampled a bunch, and getting constantly stuck in the tar wasn't making it any easier. On the subsequent attempts, I was still going nowhere. I figured that the main reason was my longsword. It only has a sliver of purple and white sharpness, and I have to sharpen a lot during the fight, so I needed an alternative. See, I'm not counting grinding for better gear as part of the challenge, since this is just a different approach to a challenge. So with that in mind, I basically had some help from a friend. Shout out to Quantized Anson for helping me get the materials for the new weapon. So once I was done with that, I got the new longsword. It may not look like a samurai weapon, but it at least is better than my previous one. There was also something I learned about longsword that I'm kind of surprised I didn't put into practice before. Because you can't keep the red gauge up like you can in some of the other Monster Hunter games, it will keep decreasing until it runs out and you have to refill it. But I learned that you can stay in the yellow gauge for a while until it gets low, then go to red. Now you might be asking, why do this when you can just go straight to red? Because staying in yellow will contribute to more long-term damage that you can at least maintain for a bit longer than just going to red straight away and having to refill it after it runs out. So after learning about that, I was ready to take on Gog Mazios again. I was doing pretty well in the fight other than getting stuck in the tar constantly and getting hit as a result. I even employed the new strategy, which was to stay in the yellow gauge for longer until I was ready to go in red. However, even with the new strategy and new weapon, I still failed. Timed out even. I pretty much had the run optimized as well. I guess Gog Mazios isn't possible to beat in an honor battle. But even so, I had to know if it is for the next monster. So here I was, moving on from my past failures to try and take on the mightiest of serpents. I was prepared for this very moment to take on Shah Dalamadur. But do you remember what I said about the normal version? How the downtime lasts longer and the moving around the map thing affected how that fight might have turned out? That was in high rank. Shah is in G rank, but not only that, it has one thing that takes this fight from somewhat doable to nearly impossible with this challenge. If the parts aren't glowing, they become hard. Not only that, but Shah has a lot of health. Combine all that with the way I set the rules for the fight, and my chances of winning this as an honor battle are insanely low. And of course, as a result, I lost the first attempt due to hitting a lot of hard spots. I even gave the second attempt my all, went for all the parts that were soft, even the tail, and I still couldn't beat it. First Molten Tigrex, then Gog Mazios, and now Shah Dalamadur. All fights I'm unable to beat honorably. As a samurai who knows honor, I have failed. I cannot defeat the legendary serpent, for I am not strong enough. In order to keep my honor, I have to know when to accept defeat, and after doing so, I gave up my life as a samurai and started a fishing business in Dundorma to sell rare fish I'd find to the townspeople. I wasn't that good at longsword anyway. If you want to see another challenge involving 4 Ultimate, check this one out since it's one that went down in history.